I want to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. You are probably broke, not because you do not earn enough money, not because the economy is bad, not because you were born into the wrong family or the wrong neighborhood or the wrong country. You are broke because nobody ever taught you where to put your money. The problem is not how much you earn. The problem is where you place what you earn. And this single mistake, this one error in placement, has destroyed more families, more businesses, more dreams, and more legacies than any recession, any depression, any war in the history of the world. Now here is what fascinates me. Over 3,000 years ago, our sages solved this problem. They did not just solve it, they encoded the solution into our sacred teachings so deeply that it has survived every empire, every exile, every persecution, every economic catastrophe that has ever occurred on this earth. And the families who followed this teaching, they did not just survive, they thrived generation after generation after generation. And yet, almost nobody outside of our tradition knows about it. Almost nobody teaches it. You will not hear it from your financial advisor. You will not read it in a best-selling money book. You will not learn it in business school. Because this is not a strategy, my friend. This is something far more powerful than strategy. This is a covenant. Today I am going to share with you what I call the three vessels. It is a principle rooted in the deepest wells of sacred wisdom, a principle that answers the most dangerous question in all of finance. Where do I put my money so that it grows, so that it is protected, and so that it is ready when I need it? Most people answer this question with their emotions. When they are scared, they hoard cash under the mattress. When they are excited, they throw everything into one investment. When they are confused, they do nothing at all. And all three responses lead to the same destination, poverty. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually, inevitably, certainly. The three vessels eliminates emotion from the equation. It replaces fear and greed with structure and discipline. It replaces guessing with architecture, and it has been doing this successfully for longer than any bank, any corporation, any government on earth has existed. My name is Rabbi Jacob, and this is Sacred Sense, where faith meets finance. If you are new to our family, I want to welcome you with my whole heart. Please press that subscribe button right now, tap the bell, and leave me a comment telling me where you are watching from today. I read every single comment because every single one of you matters to me. Now before we begin, I want you to do something for me. I want you to think about your money right now, all of it. Everything you have, your savings, your investments, your property, your business, everything. And I want you to ask yourself one honest question. If everything changed tomorrow, if the economy collapsed, if your job disappeared, if the greatest opportunity of your lifetime suddenly appeared at your doorstep, would you be ready? If the answer is no, then you need the three vessels. And by the time we finish our conversation today, you will have them, you will understand them, and you will never look at your money the same way again. Come, sit with me. Let me tell you a story that changed my life. When I was a young man studying in the yeshiva, I had a teacher. His name was Rav Eliezer. He was an old man even then, older than I am now, if you can imagine that. And he had survived things that I pray you and I never have to survive. He had lost everything, his family's home, their business, their savings, everything taken, destroyed, gone. And yet somehow, by the time I sat in his classroom, Rav Eliezer was wealthy. Not extravagantly wealthy, not flashy, but deeply, solidly, unshakably wealthy. The kind of wealth that does not tremble when the newspaper prints bad headlines. The kind of wealth that sleeps peacefully at night. I asked him once, I was young and bold enough to ask, I said, Rav Eliezer, how did you rebuild? You lost everything. How did you come back from nothing? And he looked at me with those ancient eyes that had seen the worst of what human beings can do to each other. And he said something I have carried in my heart every single day since. He said, I never lost everything. I lost two vessels, but the third one saved me. I did not understand what he meant. Not then. But he explained it to me over many weeks of learning together. And what he taught me was the most elegant, the most beautiful, the most powerful system of wealth preservation I have ever encountered in my entire life. He called it the three vessels. And he told me it came from the sages of the Talmud, who themselves received it from the wisdom of King Solomon, who himself received it from the Almighty. The teaching is deceptively simple, so simple that most people hear it and think, that is too basic. That cannot be the great secret. And that is exactly why they remain poor. Because they are looking for complexity when God designed prosperity to be structured in simplicity. Here is the teaching as Rav Eliezer gave it to me. Your wealth must live in 3 vessels. Never 1, never 2, always 3. The first vessel is earth, land, property, the ground beneath your feet. The second vessel is enterprise, your business, your trade, the work of your hands and your mind. The third vessel is water, liquid money, cash, resources that can move and flow at a moment's notice. Earth, enterprise, water, 3 vessels, equal portions, always balanced, never neglected, never emptied, never overfilled. Rav Eliezer told me that when everything was taken from him, his earth was destroyed, his enterprise was dismantled, but his water, his liquid reserves, hidden and protected, survived. And with that one vessel, he rebuilt the other 2. Within 5 years, all 3 vessels were full again. He looked at me and said, if even one vessel survives, you can rebuild. But if all 3 are empty, you are finished. The sages knew this. That is why they gave us 3, not 1. That lesson saved my financial life. And today, I am going to make sure it saves yours. Let us begin with the first vessel, earth. When the sages taught us to place 1/3 of our wealth in land, they were not giving us a real estate tip. They were revealing a fundamental truth about the nature of wealth itself. You see, my friend, land is the only asset class that God Himself created. Think about that. Stocks were invented by men. Bonds were invented by men. Cryptocurrencies were invented by men. But land was here before any of us took our first breath, and it will be here long after the last of us is gone. There is a reason the first blessing God gave to mankind in the Torah was connected to the earth. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. The earth was given to us as the foundation not just of life, but of wealth. And a foundation, by definition, is the thing that holds everything else up. When you own land, when you own property, you own something that cannot be printed by a government, cannot be deleted by a computer, cannot be devalued by a politician's speech. A building may crumble, a business may fail, a currency may collapse, but the ground beneath your feet, it endures. Now, I want to be very careful here because many people hear this and they rush out and buy the first piece of property they can find. They put 70, 80, even 90% of everything they have into real estate. And then they sit back feeling very proud of themselves, very secure, very smart. And then the phone rings, a tenant stops paying rent, a roof needs replacing, a market correction drops their property value by 30%. A beautiful business opportunity appears, but they cannot act on it because every dollar they own is locked inside walls and concrete. They are land rich and life poor. This is not what the sages intended. The sages said 1/3 in earth. 1/3. Not all, not most, not even half. 1/3. Why? Because land has a weakness that most people refuse to see. Land does not move. It is the most immovable asset in existence. And in a world that changes constantly, a world of recessions and opportunities, of disasters and breakthroughs, you need assets that can move. Land is your anchor. Every ship needs an anchor. But a ship that is nothing but anchor, that ship goes nowhere. It sits at the bottom of the ocean. So what does healthy earth look like in your life? It looks like owning property that serves you without suffocating you. It could be your home. It could be a rental property. It could be a small piece of commercial real estate. It could be raw land that you hold for future value. The form does not matter as much as the proportion. 1/3. No more, no less. There is a beautiful teaching from the Midrash that says the earth is faithful. You plant a seed, and the earth does not steal it. It does not gamble with it. It holds it, nourishes it, and in time it returns it to you multiplied. This is the nature of land. It is slow, it is patient, it is faithful, and over decades, over generations, it appreciates steadily and reliably. But faithfulness is not excitement. And this is where most people get themselves into trouble. They want excitement, they want fast returns, they want to see their money dancing, and so they abandon the first vessel, the slow, steady, faithful vessel, and pour everything into the second or third vessel where things move faster. And for a while it feels wonderful until the storm comes. And when the storm comes, the families who abandon their earth have nothing solid to stand on. They are swept away like houses built on sand. The first vessel is not exciting, it is not glamorous, it will not make you rich overnight, but it will make sure that no matter what happens in this unpredictable world, you always have ground beneath your feet. And that, my friend, is worth more than any stock tip or business trend. Now let us talk about the second vessel, enterprise. If earth is your anchor, then enterprise is your engine. It is the vessel that generates. It is where your skills, your labor, your creativity, and your God-given talents are converted into income. Without enterprise, your wealth is static. It sits there. It does not grow. It does not breathe. It does not create. The sages understood something that most modern financial advisors completely miss. They understood that there is a fundamental difference between money that is stored and money that is working. Stored money is like water in a sealed jar. Over time, it grows stale. It loses its vitality. Inflation eats it, taxes nibble at it, fear guards it, and eventually you open the jar and discover that what was once enough is no longer enough. But working money, money that is deployed into an enterprise, a business, a trade, a craft, that money is alive. It multiplies, it creates jobs, it serves people, it solves problems, and in return it comes back to you increased. In the book of Proverbs, we read about the woman of valor. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sees that her trading is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. This woman is not just a wife and mother. She is an entrepreneur. She is deploying capital into enterprise. She is working her money, not just saving it. And notice something beautiful in that passage. She considers the field first. She studies it. She evaluates it. She does not rush, and then only then does she buy. And she buys it from her earnings, not from borrowed money, not from her emergency reserves, not from her husband's savings, from her earnings, from her enterprise vessel. This is the discipline of the second vessel. You deploy 1/3 of your wealth into productive enterprise, but you do it wisely, you do it carefully, you do it with patience and study and prayer. Now here is where I see people make the most dangerous mistake with a second vessel. They fall in love with their business. And I know that sounds strange. How can loving your business be a mistake? But listen to me carefully. When you fall in love with your business, you start feeding it more than its share. You take money from your earth vessel and pour it into the business. You drain your water vessel to fund expansion. You tell yourself, this is a great opportunity. I will refill those vessels later. But later never comes, because the business always needs more. It always has another opportunity, another expansion, another emergency. And then one day, and that day always comes, the business stumbles. Maybe a competitor appears. Maybe the market shifts. Maybe a key employee leaves. Maybe a pandemic shuts your doors. And suddenly you look around and your earth vessel is empty because you mortgaged your property to fund the business. Your water vessel is empty because you spent your cash reserves on inventory. All you have left is a struggling business and no safety net. The sages saw this pattern 3,000 years ago. They watched merchants pour everything into their ships and lose everything when the ship sank. They watched farmers plant every field with one crop and starve when that crop failed. And so they said 1/3, only 1/3 goes into enterprise. Not because business is bad. Business is beautiful. Business is holy work. But business is also risky, and risk must be bounded. There is a saying from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers, that has guided my business decisions for decades. Who is wise? He who foresees consequences. The wise person does not just see the opportunity in front of them. They see what happens if that opportunity fails. They see the consequence of overcommitment. They see the danger of an empty vessel. Your enterprise should be robust enough to generate strong returns, but bounded enough that its failure does not destroy your other vessels. This is not timidity. This is architecture. This is how you build something that lasts not for a year or a decade, but for a century. And now we come to the third vessel, the one that saved Rav Eliezer's life, the one that most people neglect, misunderstand, and undervalue until it is too late. The third vessel is water, liquid money. Cash, resources that can move immediately without permission, without paperwork, without waiting, without selling something at a loss. My friend, let me tell you something that might sound radical to you. The third vessel is not your emergency fund. I know that is what every financial advisor tells you. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses and call it your emergency fund. And yes, emergencies are important, but the third vessel is so much bigger than emergencies. The third vessel is your freedom. Let me explain what I mean. When you have liquid money, real, accessible, ready-to-move money, you are free. Free from fear, free from desperation, free from being forced into bad decisions because you have no other options. When the economy crashes and your neighbor is panicking, selling his property at half price because he needs cash, you are calm. Why? Because your third vessel is full. You do not need to sell anything. You can wait. You can be patient. You can even buy what your neighbor is selling at a fraction of its true value. When a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity appears, the kind of opportunity that could change your family's trajectory for generations, you can act. You do not need to apply for a loan. You do not need to sell your house. You do not need to beg anyone for money. You reach into your third vessel and you deploy. This is what the sages meant when they said, keep 1/3 in hand. The Hebrew word they used carries a double meaning. It means both to hold and to be ready. Your liquid money is not sleeping. It is not lazy. It is not wasted. It is standing at attention, waiting for your command. Now here is where most people fail with the third vessel. They see cash sitting in a bank account earning almost nothing, and they feel guilty. They feel foolish. They look at their friends buying properties and starting businesses and making what appears to be bold, exciting moves, and they think to themselves, my money is just sitting there doing nothing. I should put it to work. And so they empty the third vessel, they pour their water into earth or enterprise, and for a while everything looks brilliant, their portfolio is growing, their business is expanding, their properties are appreciating, they feel like geniuses, and then the drought comes. Every economy has droughts, every market has downturns, every life has unexpected crises, and when the drought comes, the families with empty water vessels are the ones who suffer most. They are forced to sell their earth at the worst possible time. They are forced to liquidate their enterprise when buyers are scarce and prices are low. They become what the financial world calls forced sellers, and forced sellers always lose. But the families with a full third vessel, they do not just survive the drought. They thrive in it because droughts are when the greatest wealth transfers in history occur. When everyone else is selling in panic, the family with water is buying at a discount. When everyone else is closing businesses, the family with water is acquiring those businesses for pennies on the dollar. There is a powerful verse in the book of Isaiah that says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. Notice that the verse does not say if you pass through waters. It says when. Trouble is not a possibility. It is a certainty. The only question is whether you will be prepared when it arrives. The third vessel is your preparation. It is your obedience to the reality that life is unpredictable and markets are volatile, and the only true security is liquidity, the ability to move, to act, to respond, to survive, and to seize. 1/3, always liquid, always ready, always full. This is not optional. This is survival. Now you might be asking, Rabbi, why 3? Why not 2 vessels? Why not 4? Why not 5? This is such an important question, and I am glad you are thinking deeply enough to ask it. Let me answer it with a picture. Imagine a table. If a table has 1 leg, it falls. If a table has 2 legs, it wobbles. But if a table has 3 legs, 3 legs create perfect stability. You cannot tip a 3-legged table. It balances itself naturally, effortlessly, permanently. This is not an accident of carpentry. This is geometry. This is physics. This is how God designed stability itself. 3 points create a plane. 2 points create a line. And lines have no balance. 4 points or more create redundancy, complexity, without added stability. The sages understood this intuitively. They did not need modern physics to tell them that 3 creates balance. They observed it in nature. They observed it in scripture. They observed it in the structure of creation itself. And they applied it to wealth. When your wealth stands on 3 vessels, earth, enterprise, and water, it is stable. You can lose 1 vessel entirely, and the remaining 2 will hold you up. Think about that for a moment. If your real estate crashes but your business and cash are intact, you survive. If your business fails but your property and cash are intact, you rebuild. If your cash is consumed by an emergency but your property and business remain, you recover. But if you have only two vessels, if all your wealth is in property and business with no cash, then one crisis can topple both. Your business needs cash to survive a downturn, but you have none. So you sell your property at a loss to save the business. Now you have damaged both vessels trying to save one. And if you have only one vessel, if everything is in your business or everything is in real estate, then you are not standing on a table at all. You are standing on a stick, and sticks break. There is a passage in Ecclesiastes that says, "A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." This verse has been used beautifully in many contexts, but I believe its deepest financial application is exactly this. Your wealth must be a cord of 3 strands, earth, enterprise, and water, woven together so tightly that no single event, no single crisis, no single mistake can unravel it completely. The person who puts everything in one basket is not bold. They are brittle. The person who spreads across 2 is not safe. They are wobbly. But the person who divides into 3, that person has built their financial house on rock. And here is the most beautiful part of the 3-vessel system. It is self-correcting. When one vessel grows too large, when your real estate appreciates rapidly, for example, the system tells you to rebalance. Take some from earth and add to water. When your business generates excess profit, the system tells you to deploy into earth and water. The 3 vessels are constantly communicating with each other, constantly adjusting, constantly seeking equilibrium. You do not need a financial advisor to tell you what to do. You just need to look at your 3 vessels and ask, are they balanced? If yes, do nothing. If no, rebalance. It is that simple. It is that elegant. It is that ancient. And it works. Now I want to talk to you about something that breaks my heart. Something that keeps me awake at night. Something that I believe is the most urgent financial crisis of our time. It is this: wealth rarely survives 3 generations. There is a well-known statistic that says 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the 2nd generation, and 90% lose it by the 3rd. This is not just an American problem. This is a global human problem. It has been documented across cultures, across centuries, across continents. The 1st generation builds, the 2nd generation maintains, the 3rd generation destroys. Why does this happen? Is it because the grandchildren are foolish? Is it because they are lazy? Sometimes, perhaps, but the deeper reason is far more painful. The deeper reason is that the 1st generation taught their children what they built, but not how they built it. They transferred the money, but not the method. They gave them the vessels, but not the discipline to maintain the balance. In our tradition, we have a different approach. We do not just give our children money, we give them understanding. We do not just leave them an inheritance, we leave them a system. There is a beautiful verse in Deuteronomy that says, "Teach them to your children," talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. This verse is typically applied to the commandments, but the sages extended it to all wisdom, including financial wisdom. The 3 vessels are not something you practice in private and hope your children figure out on their own. They are something you teach deliberately, repeatedly, ritually. You teach them at the dinner table. You teach them when they receive their first dollar. You teach them when they ask why the neighbor has a bigger house or a fancier car. I taught my own children this system when they were young, very young. I gave each of them 3 small jars. I labeled them earth, enterprise, and water. And every time they received money, birthday money, allowance money, any money at all, I sat with them and we divided it. 1/3 into each jar, and I explained why. Every single time. Not because they needed to hear it again, but because repetition is how wisdom moves from the mind to the bones. Repetition is how knowledge becomes instinct. Repetition is how a financial principle becomes a family tradition. My children are grown now, and they teach their children the same system. 3 vessels, always balanced, always maintained, always respected, not because I told them to, but because it is part of who they are now. It is in their bones, it is their inheritance, not the money I leave them, but the wisdom I gave them. This is how you break the 3rd generation curse. Not with trusts and estate plans and lawyers and legal structures, although those have their place. You break it with teaching, you break it with repetition. You break it with 3 jars on a child's dresser, and a patient father who sits and explains why every single time. Proverbs tells us to train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old they will not depart from it. This is not just spiritual advice. This is generational wealth strategy encoded as sacred wisdom. Now I want to share with you a dimension of the three vessels that transforms this from personal finance into community power. Imagine 10 families. Each family faithfully maintains their three vessels, 1/3 in earth, 1/3 in enterprise, 1/3 in water. Each family has their water vessel full and ready. Now imagine one of those families faces a crisis, a medical emergency, a business setback, a sudden expense that threatens to drain their water vessel completely. In the modern world, what does that family do? They go to a bank. They borrow at interest. They take on debt. They begin the slow slide into financial bondage. But in our tradition, something different happens. The other 9 families look at their water vessels and they say, "We can help. We can lend from our water without interest because our vessels are full and our brother is in need." This is not charity. This is what happens when an entire community practices the three vessels together. The collective water becomes a reservoir so deep that no single family's crisis can drain it. And it works the other direction too. When opportunity appears, when a piece of land becomes available at an extraordinary price, when a business can be acquired at a fraction of its value, a single family might not have enough in their water vessel to act. But 10 families together, they have more than enough. They can deploy collectively, acquire collectively, and prosper collectively. This is why communities that practice this system together become exponentially more powerful than individuals who practice it alone. One family with balanced vessels is strong. 10 families with balanced vessels are unstoppable. There is a teaching that says one who walks alone may move faster, but one who walks with community arrives safely. Financial strength is not just about how much you have. It is about how many others around you are strong, because their strength becomes your safety net, and your strength becomes theirs. If you do not have a community like this, build one. Start with your family, teach your siblings, your cousins, your closest friends. Begin with 3 or 4 families who commit to the three vessels together. Meet quarterly, share honestly about your balances, hold each other accountable, be available to each other when crisis or opportunity arrives. This is not a fantasy. This is how it has been done for 3,000 years, and it is how you can do it starting today. Before I close our conversation today, I need to warn you about the 2 enemies that will try to destroy your 3 vessels. These enemies are ancient, they are powerful, and they live inside your own heart. The first enemy is fear. Fear whispers to you at night. It says, keep everything liquid, do not invest, do not buy property, do not start a business. The world is too dangerous. The economy is too unstable. Hold your money tight and do not let go. Fear turns you into a hoarder, and hoarding is slow suicide, because cash that sits idle is being eaten alive by inflation every single day. The purchasing power of your money is melting like ice in the sun. Fear feels like protection, but it is actually erosion. The person who keeps 90% of their wealth in cash because they are afraid is not safe. They are watching their wealth disappear in slow motion and calling it security. The second enemy is greed. Greed shouts at you during the day. It says, go all in. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Put everything into this deal, this stock, this business. You will double your money in a year. Only fools stay diversified. Greed turns you into a gambler, and gamblers eventually lose everything. Not because the bet was bad, but because the allocation was reckless. When you put everything into one vessel, you are not investing. You are gambling with your family's future. The 3 vessels protect you from both enemies simultaneously. They are the boundaries that keep fear from paralyzing you and greed from destroying you. When fear says hoard everything, the system says no. Deploy into earth and enterprise. When greed says invest everything, the system says no. Maintain your water. There is a passage in Proverbs that says, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. This is the prayer of balance. Not too much, not too little, not too aggressive, not too defensive. The 3 vessels are the physical manifestation of this prayer. They are the architecture of enough. This is sacred sense, where faith meets finance. I love you, God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.